Today I wanted to take a look across the draft classes within the NFC North. It's always a good idea to kind of have a baseline idea of, what the others around you are doing. So, I think it was Sun Tzu that said it in The Art of War, you need to know your enemy. So that's what we're looking to do here. So I'm going to start with Chicago. Going into the draft, they had the number one overall pick. A month or so beforehand, trade that for a haul, and you can't really talk about their draft and the quality of it without considering, basically what they were able to get in return for that number one overall pick. So they get DJ Moore, a bona fide number one receiver, outstanding acquisition there, especially after they added to their receiver room last year with Chase Claypool from Pittsburgh. So they bolster that position a little bit. That number one pick, in return, they get, DJ Moore. They get the number 9 pick, which then they trade back one position with Philadelphia, who is coming up to get Jalen Carter. And that turns into Darnell Wright. They get number 61 overall, which then they traded up from to 56, which they were able to get cornerback Tyrique Stevenson out of Miami. Which they gave up number 61 and number 136 to get that one. And then they also acquired a 2024 first round pick and a 2025 second round pick. So a pretty massive haul for the Chicago Bears, which when I saw that report, I wasn't exactly happy because while the Bears are generally a little hit or miss on some of their draft picks, the more bites at the apple, the better. You're likely to hit on somebody along the way there. All right, looking at just generally, the highlights of their draft class. So they had a big need at offensive tackle, which they were able to get with Darnell Wright, who is, a bit of a mauler. And I think with their running attack that they're looking to build there, behind Darnell Wright, they'll be able to run with Justin Fields and their running attack that they've got there, which I actually like also that running back pick that they had in Roschon Johnson, because in the limited playing that he did get at Texas, he performed pretty well, but it's just hard to see the field when you're stuck behind a guy like Bijan Robinson. So that might be a nice pick for them. And then also Tyrique Stevenson. I mean, they obviously were interested enough to jump up in the draft to pick him. But he could very early potentially compete for a starting position with them. So PFF overall gave them a B+. I thought they did indeed have a pretty good draft. So moving on to Minnesota. Minnesota took Jordan Addison with their first pick at number 23. A guy I wasn't huge on. He was a steady, consistent receiver. Didn't athletically perform the way you might want a first round prospect to, but you can't argue with his production. And he did it in 2 different locations, going from Pitt and then transferring to USC. So that he's got a good study ethic, that he was able to pick up that USC offense in the course of one off season and go out there and still produce. So there's that. I'm not terribly concerned about him because he's really probably going to be more of a possession receiver. And he doesn't fit quite that same mold that Adam Thielen had. So it's not like a one-for-one replacement for him there. But I expect that he will catch a lot of balls in Minnesota, especially because he's going to get less coverage as Justin Jefferson is really the prime target there. Not to mention Hawkinson, the tight end Hawkinson. They also picked up a need at cornerback with their second pick with cornerback Mekhi Blackman from USC as well. It's a nice addition there. They really needed depth at cornerback because they're not particularly strong. They lost guys like Patrick Peterson in recent years, and it's generally just been a downhill trend for their cornerback room. So adding some talent there at that position is very much needed. He had a good 2022 season. He only allowed 30 receptions, 1 touchdown, and a 46.1 passer rating on 63 targets per PFF. He also managed to pull in 3 interceptions that season as well. And then another defensive back that they added there in cornerback turned safety Jay Ward from LSU. Um, but I expect that kind of player in transition like that is going to have some growing pains. And then lastly, I want to hit on the Detroit Lions, who, unfortunately, as like the rising, consensus like contender out of the NFC North, like really expected to compete, especially after they had a good end to last season. Their offense was pretty strong throughout the season. They had a pretty sound draft. They the order of their picks was a little confounding somewhat. They didn't go with traditional value in the first round. They didn't go after premium positions. They went running back and linebacker, two non-premium positions to be sure. But ultimately, they got good football players. So their top 5 picks, I really, really like these players. So Jahmyr Gibbs, just too early for a running back, for my opinion, especially if it's not that generational kind of talent. At number 12, that's a little rich. And then at 18, following that up with an interior linebacker in Jack Campbell, who is an outstanding football player out of Iowa. But again, just kind of reaching for the value there is where I have more of a concern on them. But their next 3 picks were pretty good value for the most part. Some people were a little iffy on Sam Laporta over Michael Mayer at tight end, but Sam Laporta he's got more upside. Like Michael Mayer might be a little bit more of a finished, polished product right now, but depending on the style of tight end play you want, Sam Laporta has definitely got some extreme upside. So I see the great value and why they would want to take him at pick 34. And then following that up with Brian Branch, who for a long time was projected even to the Packers at 15. So, we had that need at safety that everybody perceived and everybody saw that it didn't come to fruition. But to get him at 45 instead of somewhere in the mid first round, that's pretty good value. And then lastly, quarterback Hendon Hooker. I predicted that he was going to fall to 78 and that we would take him, if he fell to 78. Fell all the way to 68, wasn't in the 30s like a lot of people started to project like the week leading up to the NFL draft. But that's great value for him. Like if he wasn't coming off an ACL injury, he would have definitely been considered one of those top quarterbacks. He had an outstanding season at Tennessee. He's got a little bit of a learning curve, as a lot of that offense was kind of a one-read kind of deal. So he didn't have to run through his progressions and make that. But there's no pressure for him to start anytime soon. Jared Goff is a capable starter, as much as some people like to scoff at Goff. But he's been to the Super Bowl. He led an outstanding offense last year that even our defense was struggling to he led an outstanding offense last year. The big problem with them was their defense, which they shored up pretty well with, through the middle of the field with, linebacker and safety early. They also picked up, some defensive interior help later. But I think they had a really nice draft. PFF had their draft graded as a B+ as well, primarily because of the fact that the positional value wasn't there in the first. If you rearrange the order of some of their picks, you could very well see that grade being boosted up into the A range. But that's kind of where the rest of the NFC North is. I think, it's going to be a competitive year, especially as, the Vikings are in a little bit of a downturn. The Bears are trying to come back up and have made big moves and really addressed a lot of their offense. I'm just skeptical of that passing game with Justin Fields for them, so I don't know how big of a turnaround they're really going to make. But the Lions did some good things to shore up just a few holes, and if they can get a little bit better play out of their defense, they're going to be a pretty dangerous team this year. So that's who I would expect the Packers to really be competing with to try to take that NFC North crown back.